Welcome to the Name the Course Show. I am your host, Mr. B. Today we have a very exciting show for you. We are updating you on the latest developments within the Iran war. It is day 14, and there are new developments. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what's been going on. There's a lot of destruction.
It's day 14 of the West Asia war. Save a miracle, this is heading into week 3. The tempo has fallen on Iran's side. Fewer missiles and drones are streaking through the skies. But the casualties, they continue to pile up. Today, Iran launched more attacks on Dubai. We've seen at least 2 impacts, most likely from drone interceptions. The first was in the industrial area. Officials say falling debris led to a fire. The second was at the Dubai Financial Center. Video showed a cloud of smoke rising over the city, that too with the Burj Khalifa in the back. The UAE is cracking down on such videos. Officials say you're not supposed to record strikes or interceptions. If you do, you can be fined or worse. Yesterday, a 60-year-old British tourist was detained for filming Iranian missiles. It's the same story across the Gulf. So if you're in those countries, do not record. Make sure you follow the local laws. Now back to the updates. Targets in Israel were also hit overnight. Iranian missiles lit up the skies over northern Israel. A number of them were shot down by the air defenses, but a few managed to sneak in. Israeli officials say around 60 people were injured in this attack. Take a look. Iran also hit a key military base in Iraq's Erbil. It's a base jointly run by France and the Iraqi Kurds. An Iranian drone set the facility ablaze. At least 1 French soldier was killed in this attack. There is sustained pressure from Iran. Sirens are ringing out daily across Israeli cities. Everyday life is being disrupted, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is undeterred. Yesterday, he gave his first press conference since the fighting began, and 2 things stood out. First, Netanyahu says he will create the conditions for regime change in Iran, but whether that happens or not is up to the Iranians. And secondly, he hinted at taking out Iran's new supreme leader.
I have added another goal: to create the conditions for the Iranian people to overthrow this terrible tyrannical regime. To create conditions doesn't guarantee that it will happen. And I told them just now, in what I said a moment ago, I said, it's up to you. It depends on you. I wouldn't issue life insurance policies on any of the leaders of the terrorist organizations. This is their patron of terrorism, and I don't intend to provide an exact report here about what we are planning or what we are going to do.
Israel's primary focus remains Iran, but they're expanding their operations against Lebanon. More than 680 people have been killed in Lebanon, and among them are 98 children. And Israel is not done yet. They're asking people to evacuate around 14% of Lebanon. The Israeli Air Force is dropping pamphlets from the sky. They're urging residents to leave parts of southern Lebanon. And this can mean only one thing: the ground invasion will begin soon. As we speak, there is a last-ditch attempt to avert that disaster. Today, the United Nations Secretary General was in Beirut. He appealed to Israel and the Hezbollah to stop fighting. But as things stand, an invasion seems likely. We're seeing Israeli soldiers and tanks amass up north, plus Lebanese cities are being bombed daily. Israel's goal is clear. They want to finish off Hezbollah this time. The fighting in 2024 weakened the Hezbollah significantly, but even now they're lobbying rockets at Israel. So the objective is to permanently neutralize this threat. Whether that's possible is a different question altogether. And now we come to Iran. The Israeli military hit at least 3 locations in Iran today. First was a missile facility in Shiraz. The second was an air defense facility in Tehran. And the third was a command center in Ahvaz. We did see explosions across the capital, Tehran, but the other claims are yet to be verified. And what about the United States? The American military is still targeting missile launchers and ships. They have released more footage of their strikes. Put together, some 15,000 targets have been hit in Iran. That's what the US is claiming. Today, their Secretary of War briefed the press. It was the usual mix of bravado, religion, and name-calling.
Iran's leadership is in no better shape. Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. It was a written statement.
I have to say, I don't really like this from Pete's Hegseth. You know, you're talking about the leader of a country. I just don't think it's politically sound to refer to those people as rats. Like, it's just, I don't know what you gain by doing that. It's just, you know, it's distasteful, really. I mean, I think this is beneath Pete. I think he should just be respectful. It's one thing that the world is watching you and they think that we're partly to blame for invading this country unjustly. Now you're referring to the leaders as rats, and it doesn't make people get warm feelings about Americans. It's going to make them feel like, you know, these people are on their high horse and they need to be humbled. I just feel like this is kind of, you know, it's unnecessary language, and Pete knows better than that. I don't appreciate that.
Wrong day to make that claim. Iran's top leadership was in Tehran today. Their president, their foreign minister, their judiciary chief, their national security chief, all of them were walking on the streets of Tehran today. They were taking selfies with the people. But Pete Hegseth says they're hiding like rats. Beyond these insults, did the Secretary of War talk about policy? Well, he did mention the Strait of Hormuz. Hegseth says we don't have to worry about it.
And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with. We have been dealing with it and don't need to worry about it. We're on plan to defeat, destroy, disable all of their meaningful military capabilities at a pace the world has never seen before.
Oil is above $100, but sure, let's not worry about it. Unlike Hegseth, the US general gave more details. He admitted that Iran retains some military capabilities, enough to hit US allies and ships.
We've made progress, but Iran still has the capability to harm friendly forces in commercial shipping. And our work on this effort continues.
Same with the Strait of Hormuz. The general was asked about the possibility of escorting ships. Again, he was non-committal.
It's a tactically complex environment, and before I think we want to take anything through there at scale, we want to make sure that we do the work pursuant to our current military objectives to do that safely and smartly.
So the US military is wary. They want to take out Iran's capabilities first and then send in the Navy. If not, there could be mass casualties. But guess who is not wary of the prospect? President Donald Trump. He says the US Navy will escort vessels if needed. It's yet another example of how chaotic this war is. The US and Israel launched this war to topple the Iranian regime. That was one of the main objectives on day one. 2 weeks later, they are no closer to that goal. The only difference? Around 2,000 people are dead in West Asia. Two weeks of fighting. Who is winning this war? Right now, the only clear winner seems to be Russia. Russian oil is back in circulation, with oil supplies from West Asia choked and prices shooting up. The US has been forced to lift sanctions. That's right, the very sanctions that were supposed to isolate Moscow. They've been lifted for a month. And buyers like India are picking up Russian crude in large quantities. Because in global politics, principles change with oil prices. That means more oil revenue for Moscow, of course. It is earning $150 million every day. This is extra income, a direct windfall from the surge in demand. Last week, the US granted a 30-day waiver. Indian refiners made quick moves. They started buying Russian oil in large volumes. In the last few days, they've bought 30 million barrels of crude oil. Indian refiners have bought 30 million barrels of Russian crude. This is to make up for the shortfall in the West Asian supply. The American hypocrisy is hard to miss, though. For most of last year, the US targeted India. They slapped punitive tariffs because India was buying Russian oil. And now the same US, the same Trump administration has made a U-turn. They need support to manage the consequences of their war, so they're praising India for buying Russian crude. Sergio Gore has issued a statement. He is the US ambassador to India. He has called New Delhi a great partner in maintaining global oil price stability. His statement welcomed India's Russian crude purchases. He called for closer cooperation between the two countries, India and the US, to stabilize the energy markets. But given the chaos they've unleashed in the global energy markets, even this waiver may not be enough. For two reasons. The first is the scale of the disruption. Look at the current level of shortage. It's 20 million barrels per day. That's the supply which has gone out of the market. This is due to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So in 2 weeks, we are looking at a loss of more than 200 million barrels of oil. That's the kind of supply that has been compromised by the war, 200 million barrels of oil. Now, the world's leading economies are trying to contain the crisis. This week, they agreed to release their emergency oil reserves. But how much can they release? JP Morgan ran the numbers. It said in the best case scenario, these countries can add 1.2 million barrels per day. That is the extra oil they can add to the market. But that number would barely make a dent. We're dealing with a shortfall, a daily shortfall of 20 million barrels. 1.2 million cannot make up for it. So that's the first issue, the scale of the disruption. The second is Russia's capacity. The US has pitched the Russia waiver as a solution. Like this alone can bridge the gap in global supply. And while the waiver will help, it can only help so much. Because Russia's capacity is not unlimited. Currently, it produces 6.5 million barrels per day. That's what Russia produces, 6.5 million barrels. This is spread across 40 refineries. Now, 6.5 million is a significant number, but it's just a fraction of the missing 20 million barrels. Even if Russia churns out oil at full capacity, it cannot substitute supplies in the long term. The gap is simply too large. And it seems like no one has a solution. From the United States to the IEA, the International Energy Agency, they're all coming up with the same prescription: waivers and release of reserves. But experts are not convinced about the efficacy of these moves. The Strait of Hormuz is still blocked. Millions of barrels of oil are stuck. Washington's 30-day waiver is like a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
I'm starting to get an idea. I'm starting to think that everything that Trump did with regard to taking out Maduro actually played a part because he intended to go into war with Iran. And I believe that the Maduro play was a way for the U.S. to secure our oil. So in the event that we can't import the oil from the Middle East, we still had a source of oil that we can tap into from our hemisphere, that no matter if the war drags out with Iran or doesn't drag out with Iran, we have more than enough oil on our end to sustain ourselves and to keep our costs at a minimum. I'm thinking that's probably the play here, is that, Trump anticipated that these were going to be the steps and the effects of an attack on Iran, and the Maduro play was really a precursor to this play with the war. Because as I think of it, a lot of countries are not able to get oil, especially India being hurt by this and a number of other countries. But why would we do that if it could potentially hurt our own oil sources? So taking out Maduro and being able to come in and tap into their oil, Trump was hosting events with the heads of oil companies, telling them this is what we're going to need to do, because he knew in the long run possibly that there was going to be a conflict with our traditional oil sources that we were importing, and that maybe those companies would not be able to extract oil elsewhere. So in a way, they had to play ball to get oil there, to sort of call for, the disruptions that would be in the marketplace. So this is where I'm thinking that's why that was such a critical play, and he probably wouldn't have done that had the Maduro thing played out differently. All right, let's continue here.
Now let's look at the propaganda war. It's being fought on social media with a flood of fake videos and reports. There are many viral clips in circulation. A lot of them use old footage or video game clips, or they may be completely AI generated, but they still manage to get millions of views, which means the internet is a war zone too. So we are back with our top viral videos of the day, decoding what really happened in the last 24 hours. Our first video is from the streets of Tehran. Thousands of people took to the streets of the Iranian capital today. It was for the Al-Quds Day March. Al-Quds is an annual pro-Palestinian event. It is held on the last Friday of Ramadan. This march is to express solidarity with Palestinians. And amid this war, thousands marched on the streets, almost as a message of defiance. The demonstrators waved Iranian flags. They held up photos of the late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Some even burnt US and Israeli flags. And it was not just the common people. Even top leaders of Iran were on the streets. They were walking with the people. I'm talking about leaders like National Security Chief Ali Larijani and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. This happened amid reports of an explosion nearby. Plumes of smoke were seen rising above, but the rally continued as planned. Meanwhile, the attacks are very much on. Our next video shows Israeli strikes. They hit targets in western and central Iran. According to the IDF, or the Israeli Defense Forces, dozens of their fighter jets carried out 20 large-scale strikes. Iran too is releasing videos of missile strikes. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Our video number 7 is from Iraq. Explosions were also seen off the coast of Iraq. 2 foreign tankers carrying Iraqi oil were engulfed in flames. They were hit by projectiles. According to reports, 1 person died in the attack. Iraqi rescuers were seen evacuating sailors from the burning ships. Our next video is from Lebanon. Israeli forces were seen gathering near the Lebanon border. They are expanding their military operation in Lebanon. Last week, Israel launched an offensive against Hezbollah. Since then, Hezbollah has fired rockets and drones at Israel every day. In Tel Aviv, residents have moved underground in large numbers. They're taking refuge in shelters amid the incoming attacks. Videos show people in underground parking garages. Some have even set up seating areas. They can be seen chatting and even playing football. And our 10th video is from Thailand. During a live morning show, Thai TV news anchors ditched their suits on air. No jackets, no neckties, just shirts. And this was not a fashion statement. This was because of government policy. You see, Thailand is suffering an energy crunch because of the West Asia war. So the government has asked everyone to save electricity. Air conditioners are being set at higher temperatures, around 26 to 27 degrees Celsius. And office workers who normally wear suits and ties have been told to take them off. The directive came from the Prime Minister himself. He said, cut energy use wherever possible. So now news anchors are taking off their jackets on air.
Let's just take it off so we can set an example of how to save energy too. By wearing less clothing, it can help with our moods and the coping with the weather. Some people who are addicted to cool air conditioners, well, now you don't have to. You can adjust the temperature as advised by the government to 26 to 27 degrees Celsius.
Before we end the story, let me show you one more video. This isn't about one engineer in Bahrain. This is a warning signal, a sign of what India's quiet cooperation with US-Israeli intelligence is doing to its own citizens abroad. From Qatar to Bahrain, Indian nationals keep popping up in Israel-linked operations, and that's eroding trust that Gulf countries place in India's workforce. You want to work in the Gulf? Employers and governments will now think twice. Well, that is a video of me saying one Indian has been arrested in Bahrain over Mossad links. Of course, this never happened. This video is a deep fake. But you realize how dangerous this is. Every day we debunk fake news and deep fakes for you, and now there are deep fakes of us too. Shows you that this war is not just being fought with missiles and jets, it is also being fought with videos. So before you share the next viral video, do verify it first. Our next story is from Iraq. Here's what happened in Iraq today. An American aircraft crashed. This was a massive military aircraft, a refueling aircraft. It had 6 people on board. All of them are dead. But how did this happen? We have 2 completely different stories, 2 conflicting versions of this incident. One is from the US military, and the other is from Iran-linked militias. So what exactly happened in Iraq? Who brought down the plane? Let's break it down for you, starting with the aircraft itself, the one that crashed. It was a Boeing KC-135 Strato tanker. This, like I said, is a refueling aircraft. It can refuel other fighter jets mid-air. Think of it as a flying petrol pump for warplanes. During long combat missions, jets connect to a boom from the tanker and they refuel while flying. This allows them to stay in the air for hours longer. These aircraft are the backbone of American air power, and losing one is a serious blow. The crash happened in western Iraq, and here's the important part. This region is packed with pro-Iran militias. Many of them operate under one umbrella, that of the Islamic resistance in Iraq. And ever since the war with Iran escalated, these groups have been attacking American positions. So when the US tanker crashed, people asked the obvious question, was it shot down? The United States says no. That's the US Central Command, or CENTCOM. They say the plane was not shot down. It was not even hit by friendly fire. They say the crash happened during a refueling operation. Apparently, 2 aircraft were involved in this maneuver. One of them went down while the other managed to land safely. At first, 4 people were declared dead in the crash. 2 of them were missing. The US launched a rescue mission, and now all 6 have been confirmed dead. Investigators are trying to determine why this happened, why the crash happened. Was it a mid-air collision? Was it a technical failure? Or a dangerous maneuver gone wrong? That's what they're trying to establish. But CENTCOM insists there is no evidence of an attack. They say they were flying over friendly airspace. Like I said, that's one story. Here's the other one. This is the version of the Islamic resistance in Iraq, the pro-Iran militia groups. They say they shot down the aircraft. They hit it using what they call an appropriate weapon. This is a claim they've made, and they've offered no proof to back it up yet. But they do have a history of doing this. They've launched dozens of drone and missile attacks against US bases in the region, so this claim cannot be dismissed entirely. Which brings us back to the question we started with. How did the American aircraft crash? The truth is we don't know. But we can tell you that the crash comes at a bad moment for the United States because the war with Iran is becoming costly. 11 US service members have already died. 140 soldiers have been wounded. And 4 American aircraft have been lost. Last week, 3 F-15 fighter jets were accidentally shot down, and now they've lost a refueling aircraft. And it raises another uncomfortable question. Is the US losing aircraft to enemy attacks, or is it the chaos of operating in a crowded war zone? This war is now testing a key part of Iran's strategy, its network of proxies. For years, Tehran has cultivated these groups, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and the Shiite militias in Iraq. Iran funded and supported them. It called this network the Axis of Resistance. And it has been central to Iran's regional strategy. It gave them strategic depth in West Asia. But now that Iran is under attack from the US and Israel, many of its allies are moving cautiously. The Hamas is weakened after the war with Israel. The Hezbollah has joined the conflict, and the Houthis are staying on the sidelines for now. Our next report has more.
For decades, Iran built a shadow army across West Asia. Not soldiers in uniform, but militias. Movements and armed groups spread across the region.
This digital calendar lightening my mental load makes it worth every penny. I wasn't fully convinced the Skylight calendar would be able to do it until I finally
To Iraq, from Gaza to Yemen. Tehran called it the axis of resistance. The idea was simple. If Iran was attacked, the entire network would rise together in the region. Today, Iran is under direct attack by the United States and Israel. But that network is not rising in full force. Some groups have joined the fight, others are holding back. And that hesitation is revealing the real limits of Iran's regional strategy. In Lebanon, Hezbollah stepped in early. The group launched missiles and drones towards Israel after the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Our choice is to confront them to the utmost degree of self-sacrifice. We will not surrender. We will defend with our capabilities and our faith, no matter the sacrifices.
But the retaliation was swift. Israeli strikes have pounded Hezbollah positions across Lebanon. They have caused heavy casualties and massive displacement. In Iraq, Iran's allied Shiite militias have also entered the conflict. They have reportedly launched drones and rockets at US facilities and Israeli targets. US bases in Erbil and Baghdad have been attacked. American diplomatic facilities have also been targeted. But many of those strikes have been intercepted. Others have caused limited damage. Experts say these groups lack the military capability to inflict serious harm. Their ties to the Iraqi political system make them cautious about escalation. Hamas, another proxy, has also stayed largely on the sidelines. The group condemned the killing of Iran's former supreme leader. But after the devastating war in Gaza, it has not been significantly involved in this conflict. And then there is Yemen. The Houthis are among Iran's most powerful partners in the region. They have ballistic missiles, long-range drones, and control territory along the Red Sea, one of the world's most important shipping routes. The group has strongly condemned the US-Israeli strikes on Iran.
Our position in Yemen, both officially and popularly, is to stand with the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Muslim Iranian people, and to be in full solidarity with them. We are fully prepared for any developments.
But the Houthis have not joined the war yet. Analysts say that decision appears calculated. The group remembers the price of confrontation. Past US and Israeli campaigns have destroyed weapons depots and killed senior Houthi leaders. Another round could be devastating for them. There are also domestic pressures. Saudi-backed forces in southern Yemen could try to exploit any weakening of the Houthis. Experts say the group may also be preserving its military power for a later stage of the conflict. If the war expands further, the Houthis could open a new front. They could target Red Sea shipping, strike Israel, or even threaten Gulf oil infrastructure. For now, however, Iran's most powerful regional partners appear cautious. Many are calculating their survival before committing to a wider war. The axis of resistance was always designed as Iran's shield. But this conflict is revealing something different. The network still exists, but its members are no longer moving in lockstep.
I think the last segment was pretty interesting because Iran is known for really kind of funding and aiding a lot of these side countries, but they don't have their own sort of infrastructure to really kind of build their own weapons, it seems like. So they're not of much use to Iran in the event that there is a conflict with them. They're not much use to them. So for a lot of countries, they need to be self-sufficient in terms of being able to produce their own arms and things of that nature. And it clearly exposes the hole in that whole axis of resistance, that when you don't really have the ability to produce your own weapons and to sort of stand up and do your own defense, you're kind of a sitting duck. And I think that's being exploited by the Israelis and the Americans. So lesson learned from a lot of these other countries, that you have to be self-sufficient. And when you're not, and you're relying on a bigger superpower, it may not be useful. I mean, you can see the same thing happened with Syria. When they were being attacked on every front, they were reliant on Russian assistance. Now, the moment Russia got into its own conflict with Ukraine, there was no more assistance that Russia could provide them. They didn't have enough weapons and ammunition for themselves and for Syria. So they chose themselves. And when they chose themselves, what happened? Syria got overran, and now there's new leadership there. So, this is, a lesson that a lot of people probably should pay attention to.
To India now. How is New Delhi navigating this war? Staying on the sidelines is not an option. We have way too much at stake in this fighting, whether that's energy or investments or human lives. So New Delhi has shifted to proactive diplomacy. We've seen two crucial outreaches in the last 24 hours. Last night, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian. Let me quote from what Prime Minister Modi said: "The safety and security of Indian nationals, along with the need for unhindered transit of goods and energy, remain India's top priorities." Reiterated India's commitment to peace and stability and urged for dialogue and diplomacy. This was Prime Minister Modi's first wartime call with President Pezeshkian. It came on day 13 of the fighting. Around the same time, the foreign ministers also had a call. India's S. Jaishankar spoke to Iran's Abbas Araghchi. The Indian side released a very short statement. It said both leaders discussed bilateral and BRICS-related issues. But Iran's statement is much longer. Here's what it says. Highlighting the importance and position of BRICS as a forum for developing multilateral cooperation, Araghchi deemed it essential for the institution to play a constructive role at the current juncture in supporting regional and global stability and security. This was the fourth call between Jaishankar and Araghchi, also the second one in 3 days. Like I said, this shows proactive diplomacy. The question is, what is the end goal? What do both sides want? For Iran, the objective is clear. They want political support from New Delhi, clear and strong support. That's why Araghchi brought up the issue of BRICS. Iran is now a member of the BRICS bloc, but so far the bloc has not issued a statement on the war. Compare this to last June. During the last war, BRICS had condemned the US-Israeli attack. Even India had signed on to that statement. This time around, India is chairing the BRICS group, so any statement will need New Delhi's support. Basically, India will have to set the ball rolling. So political support is on top of Iran's agenda. Another issue will be that of Iranian warships and its sailors. Remember, 3 Iranian ships had attended maritime drills in India. One of them was sunk by a US submarine. The remaining 2 are docked in India and Sri Lanka. IRIS Lavan is in Kochi and IRIS Bushehr is in Sri Lanka's Trincomalee. Reports say India will repatriate the sailors from Lavan. The 183 crew members were in Kochi until now. New Delhi says will reportedly, in fact, send them back to Iran. And this is crucial. The US has been pressuring Sri Lanka to not send the sailors back, not send them back to Iran. Apparently, they're hoping for some defections, that the Iranians will switch sides. It's not clear if a similar request was made to New Delhi, but either way, India is repatriating them. It is sending them back to Iran. Now let's look at the other side. What does India want from Iran? Mainly two things. The first is safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Around half of our crude imports sail through this region. So does 90% of our LPG import. 90% of our gas comes from here. And that is India's main concern. It wants Iran to not attack Indian flagged ships, basically give them a free pass in the Strait of Hormuz. Some Indian sources claim that such a pass had already been given, but Iranian sources have rejected that claim. So as things stand, there is no safe passage for India. Secondly, New Delhi would like to see stability in the Gulf countries. Around 10 million Indians live and work in that region. We are talking about a migrant workforce. Many of them do not have the resources to fly out. Plus, evacuating 10 million people is logistically impossible, which is why India is pushing for de-escalation. The question is, will this diplomatic push work? Can there be some sort of quid pro quo? Say India pushes for a BRIC statement, and in return, Iran offers safe passage for our ships. At this point, we can only speculate. US want an off-ramp. They can reach out to India. So far, New Delhi has not offered to mediate, but if this war escalates, India will have to get further involved. Not for principles or morality, but to secure the interests of our people. Is the United States running out of ammunition? I know it sounds weird, something straight out of a war movie. This is, after all, the world's most powerful military we're talking about. Their defense budget last year was around $900 billion. So how can they run low on weapons? But this is not a conspiracy theory. It's a question being asked by analysts, military experts, and even those inside the Pentagon. So what is really going on? Is America really running out of missiles, or is this just part of war panic? Let's look at the war first. This is not a ground war. This is a war being fought in the air with missiles and drones. You could call it a missile war. And missile wars burn through weapons incredibly fast. The fighting began on the 28th of February. Since then, the United States and its allies have been firing large numbers of precision weapons. I'm talking about cruise missiles, air defense interceptors, bunker buster bombs, all of it. The most famous one among them is the Tomahawk missile. Tomahawks are long-range cruise missiles. They're launched from ships and submarines. Each one carries a 1,000-pound warhead. It can travel hundreds of kilometers to hit targets with precision. But here's the catch. Each Tomahawk costs about $4 million. And according to military estimates, the US has fired around 168 Tomahawk missiles. That too in just the first 100 hours of this war. 168 Tomahawk missiles in the first 100 hours. That's roughly $600 million in missiles in 4 days. And that's just one weapon system. Because remember, Iran is not a passive player. It is also hitting back. It has fired missiles and drones across the region, at US bases, at Gulf states, and at shipping lanes. And to stop those attacks, America is firing defensive interceptors. These include the Patriot and the THAAD missiles, some of the most advanced air defense weapons in the world. But here's where the math gets crazy. A single Patriot interceptor costs around $4 million. And the Iranian missiles they're shooting down are much cheaper. Many of Iran's drones cost around $30,000 each. So you're destroying a $30,000 drone with a $4 million interceptor. That is a cost exchange ratio of over 100 to 1. In simpler words, if Iran spends $1, Washington is spending more than 100 to counter it. And that's not the only problem. You see, missiles are not manufactured overnight. For years, the US military has been using precision weapons faster than factories can replace them. Take the Tomahawk missiles again. Over the past 5 years, the US has bought just 322 of these missiles, and it has used a bulk of these in just 2 weeks. They've used up within days what they would buy over many years. And that is why many officials are worried. They fear that the US Navy will feel the impact for years to come. Then there's the THAAD interceptor. It is one of the most advanced missile defense systems in the world. You could call it the American version of the S-400. Only about 11 of these interceptors are produced every year. And last year, during the 12-day war, the US is said to have used a quarter of its stockpile. 25% of its THAAD stockpile gone in 12 days in June last year. And within a few months, they're fighting another large missile war, which is why the numbers look so tight. And the cost is exploding. According to Pentagon briefings, the war has cost America over $11 billion in 6 days. Most of that money went into munitions. So I come back to the question, is the United States running out of ammo? The official answer is no. The Pentagon says US stockpiles are strong. The White House insists that the military has more than enough weapons, enough to sustain the campaign. But privately, lawmakers are asking tougher questions. Like, how fast are the missiles being used? How quickly can they be replaced? And what happens if another crisis breaks out somewhere else? Because modern wars are a numbers game. They're not just about who has the best weapons, they're about who can keep shooting the longest.
This is a very, very valid point. Because you have to understand, the US is making ammunition, not just for their war with Iran, but they're also making ammunition for their soldiers and Israel's soldiers. And they're selling ammunition to the EU for the Ukraine war. So what reserves do we have left? Now, that's just within 14 days. All the missiles is being fired at Israel over the span of 14 days is cheaply made. They're making it $30,000 a missile, and they got like hundreds of thousands of these things. And so, yes, that's why it's so critical for them to go and bomb all the locations where they're launching them from, to just kind of try to deplete the damage. But at the same time, they're still using a lot of missiles to defend themselves and to defend their ally Israel. But also, they're using missiles to essentially attack the enemy. And to me, I don't know that Israel has enough missiles. I think we're still providing them the ammunition they need in order to take these offensive strikes. So we're providing missiles for offensive strikes, and we need missiles that we are providing for defensive strikes, preventing Iran's missiles from hitting them. And then we're also selling missiles to the EU for the Ukraine war. The question is, how long can we sustain this? And at the cost, $1 million, $4 million for every one missile produced. That's a lot. Why can't we produce it cheaper? They're doing it at 30,000. We're doing it at 40 million. What is going on? So to me, whatever the cost is of producing these missiles, it ought to be illegal. Why is it that the defense companies in the US have to, build the missiles at such a high price when it's being done so much more effectively from other countries at a fraction of the cost? That's something we got to ask ourselves. That's something we got to look into. But this is what they're saying is true. It's a numbers game. So maybe the more and more depletion with the cheaper missiles, which is Iran's strategy, they're going to deplete all your offensive missiles. And then they're going to use their big missiles that can cause maximum damage. So, how long can we keep finding them? And then we got to reproduce at the same rate of finding them, but we're reproducing for ourselves, we're reproducing for Israel, and we're still selling to other conflicts like the one in Ukraine. So it's just a depletion of our ammunition, and really and truly, is it sustainable? That's the question, which is, again, one of the factors that needs to be considered as to why we went through such great lengths to even into this conflict. It doesn't make sense for us because, like I said, it makes us vulnerable now. If there is a conflict, say in Asia, where China attacks Taiwan, or if there is a conflict that gets escalated with Russia and Ukraine, or if, the southern countries in South America, in our hemisphere, decide they want to uprise against, U.S. rule because they don't like how things are playing out, we're stretched so thin that it's going to be hard to sustain that. So, I mean, I'm not wishing ill will on the United States. I want to see us succeed in everything that we're doing, and I want our leaders to succeed. At the same time, I do think we need to critique or to assess whether or not the decisions they're making are wise ones and what its impact will be on the people, you and me, right? Because if they're not making enough ammunition, what does that then mean? They need to buy more, and they're already 30 trillion in debt. So they're not exactly in a position where they can buy more. So now what does that mean? They gotta have to raise money. What does that mean? They gotta raise your taxes, because your taxes, or portion thereof, is funding these wars. So now we're working to fund the war we don't want. Like, meanwhile, people don't, have drug addiction problems. They have other problems with inflation and high costs of things. It's not ideal position to be in if you're a leader in the United States asking or demanding this of the people.
This conflict has taken multiple victims so far: human life, including the supreme leader of Iran, energy supplies, flight schedules, and now food could be next. Global headlines have been focused on oil, about how oil tankers are stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, but there are other vessels in those waters too, like ships carrying food and fertilizers. And the biggest worry right now are the fertilizer supplies. Besides oil, the Gulf is a big source of that. It supplies nearly half of the world's fertilizers. And farmers across the world, from India to Brazil to Africa, depend on it. Our next report tells you how food could become the next casualty of this conflict.
The war in West Asia is doing something most people have not noticed yet. It is not just cutting oil supply, it is threatening the world's food. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, is now virtually closed to commercial shipping. And that passes through that strait is not just oil. It is fertilizer, the chemical that makes crops grow. Gulf nations, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain, together account for 20% of all fertilizer traded globally. That includes ammonia, phosphates, and sulfur, the building blocks farmers use to grow food. Nearly half of all the world's traded urea comes from this region. Urea is the most widely used nitrogen fertilizer on the planet. It is what makes wheat grow. It fills rice paddies. It keeps corn yields alive. Last week, Iranian strikes hit Ras Laffan. It is Qatar's industrial heartland, the world's single largest hub for LNG and fertilizer production. After the strikes, Qatar Energy halted production entirely. Hundreds of thousands of tons of fertilizer nutrients were immediately sidelined. This is the third major shock to global food security in 6 years. The first was the pandemic. The second was Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, which seized farmland and blocked the ports used to export Ukrainian grain. Now, the Iran war threatens to be the third. Since this conflict began, fertilizer prices have already risen between 10 and 30%. They are still below the peak seen after Russia entered Ukraine. But the direction is clear, and the longer Hormuz stays shut, the worse it gets. Which brings us to the link between energy, fertilizer, and food. Most people think of these as separate things. They are not. Every stage of food production runs on energy. Farm machinery runs on diesel. Trucks that move harvests run on diesel. Processing plants that turn crops into packaged food run on energy. Cold storage that keeps food fresh runs on energy. Energy indirectly makes up about 50% of the cost of food. Right now, oil prices are elevated. The fertilizer problem compounds the energy problem. When fertilizer becomes expensive or scarce, farmers face a choice. They switch to crops that need less fertilizer, or they reduce how much fertilizer they use altogether. Both options mean lower yields. India, too, has exposure to this challenge. India relies on the Gulf for up to 2/3 of its nitrogen fertilizer imports. A fertilizer shortage now would leave that season vulnerable. India's government has moved to protect consumers at the pump. But fertilizer is harder to insulate. It flows through global supply chains, and those chains run through Hormuz. But India is not alone. Brazil, too, needs supplies from the Gulf. It is one of the world's largest agricultural exporters. It gets 40% of its nitrogen needs from the Gulf. A sustained disruption threatens its soy and maize produce. And the damage will not stop at India's borders. In Africa, the risk runs even deeper. Many African farmers already use far less fertilizer than they need, not by choice, but because they cannot afford it. Even a small price increase could push it further out of reach. Less fertilizer means smaller harvests. Smaller harvests mean less food. And in parts of Africa where hunger is already a daily reality, that gap can be devastating. Even the wealthy Gulf states are not safe. Countries like the UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait produce almost no food of their own. If the strait stays closed for months, these countries could run through their emergency food stocks. The world has spent years calling the Strait of Hormuz an oil choke point, but Hormuz is also a food choke point.
Wow. Okay. Another thing I didn't consider is how important energy is towards the production of food. Fertilizers and all these different things that needs to come through that strait is a critical thing that actually helps to feed people. So it's going to constrain food, which I didn't even realize. Like, I didn't realize that the energy from oil and others is used to power the machinery to, use as an extract even to help grow the food. And to me, I don't know that this is very sustainable and that we can prolong that process any much longer. So I do think there's a huge sign here that maybe we did underestimate Iran going into this, and this decision was not made keeping in mind all these other factors that would be affected. So if you see an increase or a spike in the cost of foods in the supermarkets, it's directly related to this event. And I don't know how the politicians are going to answer that. That people got to pay higher food prices in addition to having higher taxes, in addition to paying higher costs for energy and heating and things of that nature for a war that nobody wanted. So, except the very select few. So, I don't know. I pray that Donald Trump sees the ramifications and he comes to a quick resolution instead of allowing this to prolong much longer.
Another fallout of the war, rising security threats in the US. And this is not hypothetical anymore. 2 attacks have taken place in the last 24 hours. The first one was in the state of Michigan, where a man drove a pickup truck into the entrance of a synagogue. Hours later, another attack unfolded in Virginia. A gunman opened fire inside a classroom at a university. The motive behind both attacks is still being investigated, but US officials say this is also about rising extremism in the country. Our next report has more.
2 violent attacks, 2 different states, and a country on edge. Within hours, a synagogue in Michigan and a university in Virginia became the scenes of deadly violence on Thursday. It started in Michigan. A man drove a pickup truck straight through the entrance of Temple Israel, one of the largest Reform Jewish congregations in the United States. The vehicle smashed through the doors and into a hallway. At that moment, 140 children were inside. They were attending a preschool program. Security guards quickly confronted the suspect. They opened fire and stopped him before he could reach the classrooms. The attacker was identified as 41-year-old Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, a naturalized US citizen born in Lebanon. Investigators are still examining his motive, but reports say Ghazali had recently lost close relatives in an Israeli airstrike in Lebanon. The FBI is leading the investigation. Authorities say the attack is being treated as a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community.
The FBI is here working with our state, local, and federal partners to investigate this incident, and I ask for your patience as we process this evidence and pursue every lead that has come to us and that we have developed thus far.
Inside the synagogue, the evacuation happened quickly. All the children were brought out safely. No staff members or children were seriously injured. However, about 30 law enforcement officers are being treated for smoke inhalation after a fire broke out in the building. US President Donald Trump has condemned the attack.
And before we begin, I want to send our love to the Michigan Jewish community and all of the people in Detroit area following the attack on the Jewish synagogue early today. And I've been fully briefed, and it's a terrible thing, but it goes on.
What happened in Michigan is not an isolated case. Anti-Semitic incidents have been rising sharply across the United States. Since early 2024, anti-Jewish incidents have accounted for nearly 2/3 of religiously motivated hate crimes reported nationwide. The tensions are unfolding as the United States and Israel are engaged in a widening war with Iran. And officials say conflicts abroad can sometimes trigger threats at home. That fear was reinforced hours later, this time in Virginia. A gunman opened fire inside a classroom at Old Dominion University. One person was killed, 2 others were wounded. The shooter was a former member of the US National Guard. Investigators say he had previously pleaded guilty to attempting to provide support to the Islamic State terrorist group. Witnesses say he shouted "Allahu Akbar" before opening fire, but he did not get far. Students inside the classroom fought back. They subdued the attacker and stopped the shooting. The FBI is investigating the incident as an act of terrorism. But Thursday's violence has sent a clear message. The war overseas is no longer just limited to where it is happening.
I almost started testosterone injections until I found this. Let me show you how I doubled my testosterone levels without touching.
And that threat is not fading.
The US-Iran conflict has also entered the world of football. The FIFA World Cup is still months away. It will be hosted by the US, Canada, and Mexico. Iran has already qualified for the tournament, but the war has changed everything. Tehran says it may not participate. To make things worse, US President Donald Trump has questioned whether Iran should play. And this has left Tehran enraged. Its national team says no government can make that decision. And now FIFA is caught in the middle. What happens if a qualified team refuses to play? Here's a report.
The 2026 FIFA World Cup begins in June. But the tournament is already caught in a geopolitical storm. At the center of it is a question no one expected to ask. Will Iran even play? The United States, Canada, and Mexico are hosting the World Cup. Iran is one of the first teams to qualify. It topped its Asian qualifying group and secured a 4th straight appearance. But the war in West Asia has changed the conversation. The conflict began after U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th, and now the tensions are spilling into football. The first signal came from Tehran. Iran's sports minister said the country may not be able to take part in the tournament.
This corrupt U.S. government has assassinated our leaders, so we are not in a situation to participate in the World Cup.
Initially, FIFA was still expecting Iran to participate. The governing body said its goal was to host a safe World Cup with every qualified team involved. Then, U.S. President Donald Trump weighed in. He first said Iran's national team would be welcome to compete, but then reversed course.
The Iran national soccer team is welcome to the World Cup, but I really don't believe it is appropriate that they be there for their own life and safety.
Iran responded immediately. The national team posted a statement on social media. They said no individual or country has the authority to exclude them from a global sporting event. The team also pointed out that the World Cup is governed by FIFA, not by any government. That leaves FIFA in a delicate position. Its rules require qualified teams to participate in the tournament. If a country withdraws, it can face financial penalties. Additional sanctions are also possible. That could include disciplinary action or even bans from future competitions. And there is no modern precedent for a team withdrawing from the World Cup this late. If Iran does pull out, FIFA would have full discretion to replace it. Teams from Asia, such as Iraq or even the UAE, have been mentioned as possible alternatives. But that decision could carry political consequences.
As disciplinary measures, FIFA could also take away the rights as an association. The Iranian abstained from FIFA as a federation. That could be a punishment.
For now, no final ruling has been made. FIFA is expected to review the situation in the coming weeks. But the Iran controversy is just one cloud over this World Cup. Record-high ticket prices and the recent Mexico cartel violence have also dented the tournament's image. What was meant to be football's biggest celebration has become a lightning rod for political tension. And at the heart of it all sits one question. Will Iran take the field, or will politics keep it off the pitch?
So there you have it. That's the latest updates on what's going on in the world. The food potential shortage might be a major problem. Yet again, to consider that didn't seem to get talked about much. Hopefully this matter gets resolved quickly. That being said, thank you guys for joining us. For the show. If you're not connected to the show, please like and subscribe by clicking on the button below, and also weigh in, comment. Let me know what you think about the events of the world and maybe possible solutions that should be considered. All right, guys, signing out.